Echo 5, do you copy? Echo 5.
Echo 2, good morning. Nice of you to drop by.
Feeling alright, sir? Thought we lost you.
Right now, I feel like I can take on this whole podcast myself.
I know what you mean. Ready to send that transmission to Echo Base?
Yes, sir. R10, patch through.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hoth Transmissions. Today we are going to be discussing episode 7. So it's going to be just me and Sam today. Fluffy is taking a little break. She's doing a little bit of traveling, so she will be here for the finale. So without further ado, let us jump into the episode. All I gotta say is, first thing, these guys are Jedi connected to the Force. Why are they using a metal detector to find the Force?
I know. I mean, from a guy that's been trying to keep positive in every episode of this, there were things that I was like, why? But then other parts were just like, oh my god, that is so cool.
Yeah, like this one was all over the place. Like the cool stuff was the new stuff.
Yeah.
But the bad stuff was it felt like we were watching episode 3 all over again, just from a different perspective. Which we had a lot of the same shots. And I was like, are you guys just trying to hit a runtime quota here? Or I didn't see any purpose to it.
The runtime was actually longer for this one than the others.
It's because they added all the stuff from episode 3.
That is true.
That's why.
I mean, I like the fact that we found out that I was right about Torben having the scar.
Yes.
Which made me happy. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, it was a mixed bag, really. I love the fact it was another flashback. I hate the fact it was episode 7 out of 8.
Yeah, that was one of my problems, because I was looking at it and I was watching it. I'm like, okay, so we've had all this build up to this reveal, and all of us are like, dude, this better be like a solid review or like reveal. And it was just kind of meh. And I really don't understand why they waited this long to add this episode. Like they could have easily just combined it as episode 3, because they did so much of build up in episodes 5 and 6 just to throw in a flashback and then jump back to the main story.
Yeah, I think it's the one thing that plagues this series is the pacing.
Mm-hmm.
and the way that they've done this now. I mean, episode 3, I get, because we had the 2-episode introduction to who these characters are. Then we had the flashback to who the twins are and, sort of what's going on with them. Then we had more reveals. And now it's another flashback. It's like, I get exactly, where you come from. It's like, why, if the episodes were longer and we had more, more content within them, I think it would be fine to have a flashback here, as long as it tied into the main story. So, like for me, I thought it was going to be that Sol was going to start telling May about what actually happened and what went down, and then then have the flashback. But it was just straight flashback, and it didn't give any answers in the grand scheme of things.
Answers we didn't already know, which is the funny thing. And the way I took this episode was Sol is like, May, you're gonna listen to me, and this is him telling everything, because it's pretty much from his perspective most of the episode. And like May's still at fault, and so is the not Mother Anastasia, but the other one.
Yeah.
So And it sucks because Indara's the only one out of the four of them that's like, no, we're leaving, or we're going to keep doing what we're doing. The council said no, so we're going to follow what they said. So the matter is closed. We don't need to pursue it. And she's the first one that gets killed,
Yeah. That
which is sad.
Yeah. And
he didn't kill Naka. Like, he really wasn't that involved. He just got his mind taken over. He was on Indara's side.
Yeah, it almost felt like the more I look into how this episode has shown the characters, it almost felt like episodes 1 and 2 where May was, trying to be the acolyte or the assassin. It feels so pointless. You've got two characters that were barely there, one that didn't want to do it in the first place, one's a Wookiee, and then you've got the two that actually go into the compound, essentially, that were there to get the twins. And it's like, well, why are you going after all four? Like, there's no point.
In my opinion, the twins don't know that Torben was the headstrong one that just. I got a lot of things to say about Torben, but they don't know about him being headstrong and being the one that initiated this whole thing.
Yeah.
All they know is Soul killed Anastasia. May saw him do that. And everyone that she's killed, I feel like he would have been the first one she would have gone after instead of Indara.
Yeah. That's
so.
It makes no sense. Like, the way that it's been done, it just, I don't know. It's hard to put my finger on it, because for me, like, watch this episode is great by itself. The visuals are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
They've really
acting is decent.
Yeah, they kind of really stepped up their game with this episode. But when you put it in the grand scheme of things, the context of the other 6 episodes that we've had prior, apart from the other flashback episode, it's so out of place and it causes more confusion.
Yeah, so I think they just need better story writers for this, just because I don't think they know how to pace or place story correctly.
Yeah.
Because I get that they wanted to wait for this big, like, Luke, or it's like, no, I am your father moment to try and, like, okay, big reveal and put everybody in shock and awe. And it was just a huge letdown, because, like, literally, Soul was right from a certain point of view. May did start the fire that caused all this. And it was the other mother that kind of egged her on, because she's like sitting here, it's like, use your anger, because she sat there and said, your enemy's not going to tell you before they strike. And she's like, if you want to go save May, then you got to go stop her. I mean, if you want to stop Osha, you got to go stop her. And so she instigated the whole thing. May knows that, because if the mother didn't antagonize her to go do it, none of this would have gone down the way it did.
Yeah. I mean, I do like how we got the answer as to why the stone building was on fire, and it's
because it's electrical through all of the whole facility.
Yeah. So I like, from a sort of more realistic point of view, I did like that part.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the death of Anastasia was. I can kind of see where Soul was coming from, where you've got this woman who was in front of you turning into, a Dementor from.
He did it out of fear, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you don't know what's going to happen. This woman's becoming like this weird sort of dusty ghost person. Like, I would do the same.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it's right in front of you. If she had explained beforehand, like, the story would be different. But I think, like, just the fact that it happened that way, again, it's sort of plot armor, because the other thing is, we still don't know how the others died.
Just to jump on the mother turning in Soul real quick, the mother told him she was gonna let Osha go with him anyway. So why did she do all that theatrics, even though she was gonna still let him take her?
Yeah, and that again is part of the plot armor bad writing thing. You know, don't get me wrong. I've not written anything that's worth anything. So you know, for people to have written, and then you've got the director as well. You know, showing their work.
No, but you've seen a lot of media that you can tell what bad writing is compared to what good writing is, because you know what you like and what you don't like when it comes to story.
And this just felt like there was a lot of random. It's not even like plot holes, but it kind of is similar to that. And this is one of the big ones. Is, well, why was she turning into this big ghost thing to then say that she was going to let Osha go anyway? It's like, well, what's she going to do? Like take over Osha's body to get her out, or what? Because you know we saw that happen.
Well, that was May that she was protecting at that point.
Yeah, but
which I still don't understand that protection there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's that whole bit of the episode was sort of just it was great to get the other perspective, so the other side of it that we saw in episode 3. But at the same time, it didn't answer any questions. Like how did how did the other women there die? Like I know that we saw the bodies.
Yeah, because
that's my thing, but
I'm gonna take it from Legends. I'm sure they'll come out and explain it later, which kind of sucks. Is like you watch a show, and they should be able to reveal and give you the ideas in the show itself. You shouldn't have to wait for the director to sit here and come out and say things like, okay, like with Kimira and the bathing scene, she's like, okay, that's more of a seduction to the dark side, so that's how we want to portray it. It's like, okay, well, you got to be more specific in telling that in the story, and not have to go out and go in interviews and sit there and have to explain, because that's the same thing with the sisters here, because it takes all of them to control a Wookiee's mind, and then Indara just comes in, puts her hand on Kalnaka's head, and all the sisters die because Indara is too powerful for them. And I'm thinking it's some Jedi move, because I know with Bane, there was an ability called a Force Bomb or something like that, where it sends out a wave and kills like any Force sensitive, which obviously it didn't kill the Jedi. So I feel like it was more like a thought bomb. Like she came in, took control, and it's like, okay, yeah, you witches think you're strong. Well, I can kill all of you with the Force. Boom, done.
Yeah.
Or it could be kind of like that lame thing with Luke, where he projected himself across the galaxy, and then once he returned, he died. That maybe they were using so much of their magic to control Kalnaka that once the bond was broken, they just couldn't handle it. Because it was like such a sudden severance instead of being a controlled severance.
I mean, that kind of makes sense, but at the same time,
it's not explained.
Yeah, we're in episode 7 of 8. We already know that they're dead. How, like you say, you know, I want to know as a viewer how they died, like what caused them all to die, and I don't want to have the director to come out and say, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm now going to explain this." It's like, no, you have a 30+ minute episode to explain it. Now is not the time.
And that's what I've been saying from the beginning, and I may get a lot of haters because I just think the writing has been very terrible this season.
I mean, for me, you know, like I said, I've been quite optimistic and positive about this, but I think now is the point where it's the cracks are getting bigger. Like, you know, the small stuff, you know, the bad writing and stuff, I could let that slide in the early episodes because, you know,
Story building.
Yeah, story building, sort of world building within this time frame. But now the decision to have another flashback when we're one episode now away from the end without a confirmed season 2 was just like, nah, it's not a good one.
No, and I did like that they did reference the Night Sisters at least.
Yes, yeah.
So the Dathomirian Night Sisters did exist at that time, or at least they were at least known about. But there's just so many things I want to say because it's literally being episode 7 and a flashback that kind of ruins the season for me because it kind of takes me out. Like, I think this would have been a lot better if they did the flashbacks as its own season, and then season 2 be about May taking revenge. Like, do a time skip.
See, if it was one season, I would go with the in air quotes flashback episode as episode 1. So we know who these Jedi are. So yeah, episode 3 is episode 1. 1 and 2 then get pushed to 2 and 3. Then we have this episode as the potential
finale.
Well, I was going to say flashback as an flashback, but from Sol's point of view when he's explaining things, and then the rest of the season can play out in the same way, in the same order, where then we've got the appearance of the stranger, and you know, then we find out who that is, and all of that stuff. So we get the sort of boring flashback reveals that don't answer anything done with sooner, because we already know who these characters are, and then the season can then continue in the right way. But to have, like I said, it's just the issue of this is episode 7. We don't know anything about Camilla and about what his part is. And I honestly, if we get another partial flashback in the final episode, that's not going to be good. That will fully take me out of the story, because we know that there is some connection there to the Jedi with Camilla.
And everybody's having the same theory that we have between him and Vernestra.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I'm trying to be positive about it, but I mean, it's like having a flashback this late in a story, it just kind of takes me out. Like, if it was more like Sol kind of is talking to May and kind of do like maybe 15 minutes, like jumping here and there, instead of telling a whole episode story about it, and then 15 minutes of the episode this, and then we jump over to Chimera and Osha and finish off with their story to lead into episode 8, I would have been fine with. But
yeah,
like I said, like 5 and 6 built up a lot, and then episode 7 just kind of pulls you out of the story. And now it just feels awkward jumping into the finale because it's going to go back to present day. And it's like, okay, oh yeah, I forgot about all this.
Yeah, it essentially does kill the story dead. And that is the problem, that, you know, we as the viewers, we don't have to see things linearly, because, you know, a lot of sci-fi tropes don't do that anymore. But when we have such a build-up and then such a reveal, and then we have this episode, it kills the story dead. And I think episode 8 will have to be incredible for me to be drawn back in. And this is coming from the guy that was trying to be positive about every episode. There are positives in this episode, but the negatives are outweighing it just because of pacing and how it's been written.
Yeah, and with as much story as they have left to tell, it can't just be another 35-minute episode. Like, they need to give us a full-on hour. Because
Yeah.
we still gotta tie up May and Soul, and then we gotta tie up Osha and Kamir. Because last time we see them, May is strapped onto a bed, being forced to listen to a story. And then you got Osha, who's put on a mask and always hear her is breathing. And so, like I said, they're switching roles, I guess. The balance of each other or something. I don't know. If one goes light, the other one has to be dark.
Yeah.
And as much as I love Soul also, like, it just seems like this is just like a group of renegade Jedi that don't know how to control their emotions. Like, I know the Jedi aren't perfect, and this is supposed to be that thing leading up to the prequels. But even now, I feel like these Jedi shouldn't be as emotional as they are, especially with Soul being, no, I must have Osha. I must have Osha. She's calling to me to be her Padawan, or to be my Padawan, and it's like, bro, you literally were spying on them on a tree, and all of a sudden, she has to be your Padawan. Like, there's really no build-up or any explanation for that at all. Like, I didn't understand that connection because it didn't seem. I think he's just desperate to have a Padawan because Andara's like, that's why I have a Padawan and you don't. He's like, well, I'll show you.
Yeah, it kind of feels like looking back, and I know that we've said it before about the Jedi sort of taking kids at a young age, sort of without the kids' real consent. Obviously, this doesn't apply in Osha's case, but it feels more like a kidnapping movie. I'm half expecting Liam Neeson to turn up and give his Taken speech. It's one of those things where it's like, it's showing, and I get that it's showing it and why, that the Jedi aren't as good as they should be, or as they've been perceived to be in the prequel trilogy, and it does show them slipping further and further before they fall. But at the same time, it's like, we've got 100 years between that and when they all get wiped out, basically.
Mm-hmm.
The story could have been so much better. And again, for a show called Acolyte, it's like the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, Mando comes in and steals an episode or two.
Yeah, they had to bring Mando in, but I say had to. It was written that Mando was brought in, and it then became Mandalorian 2.5. Mm-hmm. And the Acolyte is just Acolyte by name only. You could literally have any other title for it under the Star Wars banner, and it will still be Star Wars.
Yeah, they could have just called the show The Virgins or Born of the Force or any random name, and it would still make sense. Like, they could even call it just the High Republic.
Yeah.
And it would have been, okay, yeah, this is the High Republic, cool. And it's like, I feel like the Jedi should be a lot more stoic, especially at this point in the story. Like, I don't know what is up with Torben, but okay, so all right, so Sith are supposed to be extinct for over a millennia, right?
Yeah.
According to Kiadi Mundi, but we'll find out if that gets taken care of in the next episode or not. But I imagine, because like, even when I read Master and Apprentice, Qui-Gon and Kenobi went to a mission to check out some like disagreement on some planet. And yes, a little bit of action and stuff like that, but they weren't going there for the intention of fighting. They're there to be diplomats and be what Jedi are, the protectors of the galaxy, and stop wars from happening or people getting killed before necessary. And here, Torben is just like getting upset. He's like, "We're just sitting here doing nothing. We've been here for 7 weeks. I just want to go back. I just want to go back home to Coruscant." It's like, bro, there's no Sith. not really much war. So what are you so anxious about, kid? Like, just enjoy the nice little planet that you're on and enjoy your little vacation. But he just
Yeah,
seemed a little too rebellious and too emotional, especially for an apprentice of Indara, because Indara seemed like she was the most stoic and in most control of her feelings than the rest of them. I'm gonna say
yeah,
actually not the rest of them, because Kalnaka was just kind of there. Kalnaka didn't really do much. The only thing emotion that we got out of him was Torben like saying I'm not hungry and oh don't want to upset a Wookiee and deny their food or something like that, and then Kalnaka makes a little grunt and that's about it.
yeah. See, even Kalmaki, as great as it is to see a live action, fully fledged Wookiee Jedi, why? Like there was no point. He didn't really progress the story in any way, shape, or form.
Well,
Apart
I
from
mean,
he died.
like he could have been any species is basically what you're saying. But
Yeah,
I think it was just to include a Wookiee Jedi just because people want to see a Wookiee Jedi. Like even though he didn't play a big role, it was still just cool to see it. And like I've been saying, like a lot of the projects that we're seeing, a lot of the main characters are human. So it's nice to see a more of the galaxy's species. And Wookiees we don't see too much of, other than like Chewie and a few episodes of Clone Wars.
yeah.
So I mean, so I see what you're saying. Like he didn't progress the story, but I mean he didn't degrade the story in any way either.
But then to me, if it was any other alien species, that would also be great. But it's like, Legends material where you've got a Wookiee that's a Jedi.
Labaka, I think, is
Yeah, that would be awesome to see. And we do know that there are other Jedi that are Wookiees because Bad Batch had one. It is purely the fact that for me as a fan, and we know how awesome Chewie is, it would have been great to see a Wookiee Jedi be that awesome. It felt like it was a wasted character, as a whole. And like I say, then it could just be any other alien species would have been equally as fine doing the same stuff.
yeah. I see what you're saying there because the character just seemed pointless because he was just a background character.
Yeah, like all that build up that they did in the trailers and everything of a Wookiee that's a Jedi. And what did he do? Like that.
Beat
That's
up Torben.
well, yeah. Like when Ferrell used his claws to scratch up Torben's face, but that's it. In every other episode he's done, or every other episode that he was in when he was alive, he did nothing.
Scared off a bunch of people and then went into his hut. And the next time we see him, he's got a lightsaber char across his chest.
Yeah, it's like that character deserved so much more.
So we do find out why Kalnaka is kind of by himself on the planet. I forget the term, but it's where it's kind of like similar to the whole Wookiee like life debt thing. So they hold it very dear to their friends as well. So if they harm one of their friends, it's such a big shame and dishonorable thing. So they outcast themselves. And so that's taken from Legends. I'll post it on the Instagram or the Discord once I find the actual term for it. But or if any of you guys know, go ahead and comment below or comment on our page because it's gonna bother me until I figure it out.
Yeah.
But that's why Kilnock is on. What's that forest planet they were on before? I forget the name.
Yeah, my mind's gone blank on that one as well. We're doing really well with this.
Yeah, we're doing some really good Biden moments, and so we know why he's outcasted there, and it's because of this whole fight scene. And I do want to talk about this fight scene. Like, it's Kalmaka just kind of comes out of nowhere, and Torben's not ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, as far as fight scenes go, I both really enjoyed it and I hated it. But I'll explain why sort of as we're going along. But yeah, Torben, he was very much taken off guard on this.
Yeah, because
And
he's so worried about fighting the witches with their little arrows, and he's doing pretty good, like deflecting. And I don't know why they're just shooting him and not Soul. Maybe it's because Soul's fighting the other witch, and maybe they're kind of like fair fighters. They're like, okay, they're fighting them. I'm not gonna take this fight away from her. So we're just gonna focus on this Padawan over here.
yeah, again, that kind of made no sense to me as to why they was just targeting one, but that, yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
But anyways, back to the fight. Sorry.
Yeah, so the fight itself, again, sort of for a Wookiee Jedi, I thought he was very underpowered when fighting Soul. Against Torben, yeah, I get, because Torben's a Padawan, all that stuff. But
He's done really well for being a Padawan, though. Even though he got his face slammed up against a stone wall. Poor kid.
The fact that he was still able to hold back the lightsaber, that was pretty good. But then, how strong would Kanaka be? Because he's a Wookiee. He's not weak. We've seen it in Chewie, and obviously the other Wookiees in Revenge of the Sith.
And I'm gonna say Chewie isn't as trained as Kalnaka. And when I say trained, I don't mean like a house pet, but I mean like Jedi. They exercise, and I'm sure they go to the gym and stuff like that. And so Kalnaka's a little bit more trained, not only with the Force but also physically. Whereas Chewbacca is just kind of just a mechanic. So if Chewie's pretty powerful just being a mechanic. Imagine somebody that's basically trains every day. Should be a lot stronger.
Yeah, so I kind of felt I felt like that took me out of it as well, because I mean maybe it was the fact that that his body and mind was being controlled by someone else,
and they don't know how to fully utilize his ability. So
yeah,
I could go with that.
At the same time, it's kind of like, is it that case? Is it not? And then it adds to the whole thing of then, well, why did he go into the sort of self-imposed exile? Because technically,
it wasn't him.
Yeah, which then adds to the other plot holes that this episode's causing.
So I'm gonna probably a little bit of a stretch, and like I said, I write stories, so this is just kind of how I would have written it. So if Kalnaka was being controlled by the witches, he's Force sensitive, so he should be pretty strong in the Force. So maybe the reason why he was a little bit underpowered was because he was fighting it himself and holding back as well, to a certain degree.
I mean, it's hard to tell.
I mean, that's how I would write it, if anything.
Yeah, I think because we've had no other information about it, like we can only make up our own versions of the story,
which is a very irritating thing about the show. Is like I feel like I have to come up with more story than they've given us.
Yeah, especially for like we said, for half hour or 25-minute episodes. I think I read somewhere though that this episode and the finale will have roughly the same runtime, which, quite frankly,
worries me.
It scares me because like there's so many answers. Unless this is going to lead into a separate series, and if so, why? It's got to wrap things up, and the pacing's going to be off, like straight off the bat.
And that's kind of what worries me, is that I know there's a lot of rumors on the internet. I've been able to confirm any of it, and because of how bad the show is, I've heard they canceled season 2, but then I hear that season 2 is still a thing. So,
and then I mean the other,
once I have more information, I'll let you guys know. But
yeah, the problem is there's sort of 3 prevailing rumors. One is season 2 got cancelled. Second is season 2 is still happening. Third is there's no season 2 at all.
yeah,
It's just not been a thing that's been confirmed. And
well, kind of, because Leslie said that they would probably explore other things in a season 2. So, I mean, that's just from her perspective. She says a lot of crazy stuff. Let's just be real.
yeah,
Until I hear like any official like thing from Disney saying, yeah, there's gonna be season 2, or it's been renewed for a season 2. Like,
until I
right
see
now,
a
I'm gonna
trailer,
hold it as not.
yeah, you know, until the trailer comes out, that's it. You know, it can still be hearsay or rumors, because I mean, let's face it, it's not like Disney to move the schedule around and sort of plug things like the Skeleton Crew and then push its release date back by a year,
Something like that.
yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if in a couple of years' time we get the announcement. But by the rate that this is going, in all honesty, as much as, like I say, Captain Positive here, I don't really want a second season unless they massively change it.
I would feel if they do another season, we're not gonna have many. I feel like we will have flashbacks, but it depends if they focus on Khmer, which I'd be okay with. They just got to write it better, not do all the flashbacks in the beginning, build up the characters there, because I mean, Khmer's already introduced here. So start the next season, like do the reveal of him and Infernestra for the finale, and then start the next season with a flashback and with him, and then go from there. No more flashbacks after that.
Yeah,
And like I was talking with my buddy, and we are saying like Khmer is like such an interesting character. Like the rest of the show, but whenever he's on, he's kind of like the Kylo Ren of the sequels. It's like whenever he's on the screen, he steals the show.
yeah.
And it's just very frustrating because there's so much story I want to know, but they're not focusing on it. And especially like with the girls, like they haven't really explained the importance of the girls yet. All we know is that the girls are meant to be their leader, or they're supposed to lead the way. I don't think be the leaders, but from the girls' perspective, they think they're going to be leaders. But then you see these witches around like this deep hole, and they're doing a ceremony around it, and the girls aren't even there. So I think they mentioned something about a sacrifice. So I think Soul and Torben were right to rescue them, because I think they're going to be tossed down that hole anyways, because they'd lead the way, made their sacrifice. I don't know what it would do, but because the whole ceremony was called Ascension.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like these are the questions that, as fans, we need to know in the episodes. We shouldn't need to be, as as great as I love discussing the details on this podcast, because that's what we're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes so bad when we're making up the story to fill in the gaps, and it's like we shouldn't need to be doing that. We're not paid to create stories for Star Wars. Again, it would be amazing if we was, but we're not. We're avid fans, and I think for me this has gone very much the way of Marvel, where Marvel was pushing out all these different things, and now they've hit that point where it's like, yeah, we're just putting Star Wars stuff out to make a bit of money. Like we're not going to put much thought into it, and we're going to contradict what we already know, and it's like, guys, really step back. We've got Andor season 2 coming out. Focus on
Director
that.
Krennic coming back. Let's go.
Yeah. So big news in that. Focus on it. We don't need a new Star Wars property every other month. This isn't Marvel. Star Wars fans like you and I that have grown up with it. We're not just going to be like, nah, Star Wars, we're not going to watch it. Of course we're going to watch it. And it's the same with Marvel, but at the same time, us fans lose the want to watch it when it is quite literally a new Star Wars thing nigh on every other month. Because the time between this and Bad Batch season 3 was a couple of months.
Yeah,
that's not enough time to let the dust settle from one thing to then go into another.
well, I think it's because a lot of this stuff was announced way before, and they're finally trying to get the projects they announced out of the way so they can start on the newer ones that they've announced, which I think is funny because they've announced so many games, and pretty much I think only a couple of them have actually come through. The other ones were canceled. And just like they keep, especially with the Lando show, apparently that's still a thing, but it got canceled, and they're like, oh no, we're still doing it. And just a matter of time of when is it coming out.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm like, I don't need a show about Lando. Don't get me wrong, I love Donald Glover. Like, I would love to see more of him play that role, but with everything they're trying to do, I feel like that'd just be backtracking the story into something that we don't really need. Because with all the media that they're coming out with now is focusing on a different direction.
Yeah.
It would have made more sense when Solo came out. But now that they're doing Acolyte, the Skeleton Crew, and jumping in different timelines now, to jump back into the Luke Skywalker era would be kind of a backtrack.
Yeah, and again, as a fan, I don't need to know all the backstory of every single character. The fact that we had Solo, I still enjoy Solo. So
I did too.
I'm like, it was a good film.
I didn't even want that movie. I was like, we don't need to. We already know about his race. We already know about his deal with Jabba. We already know all this other stuff. I'm like, we don't need to have a whole movie about Han Solo. I'm like, especially if it's not Harrison Ford. And I refused to go see it the midnight showing. And one of my friends talked me into it. And I did talk to one of the guys that was in the movie. He DM'd me on the hotspot, and he said, he's like, hey, just he was seeing some of my concerns about Alden, and he's like, no, dude. He's like, I've been on set, and just give him a chance. Like, trust me, he's really good. And so we had a conversation about it, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll go see the midnight showing. And I saw the midnight showing, and I was like, dude, I'm so glad I saw this movie. Like, very unpopular opinion, but I think Solo is probably the best movie that Disney's come out with for Star Wars, and it wasn't even something I wanted.
Yeah, and I think because we had a bit of Lando's backstory in there as well.
That's true too.
And I think for me, that's enough. Like I don't need another bit of Han Solo or Lando because I've got the Solo movie. So I don't.
And we got. I was gonna say we also got more Lando in Rebels as well.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna get a mini series or a show about Lando, it's just gonna be all these him swindling people.
Yeah.
And like I said, I love Donald Glover, and I just don't think we need a Lando project right now, considering.
Yeah, the only way I can see it working is if it was how he became, the controller of Cloud City. But
Which I think that would probably be what they would do.
Yeah, but even then, I don't need that. You know,
No, I'm comfortable just knowing that he is the director of that place, and we got that role in Empire.
yeah,
And then he joined the Rebellion and became pretty epic. One of the best characters of Star Wars.
although he does wear Han Solo's clothes.
That's true.
I love that. In
I
family,
forget what Billy. I know Billy D was in a what you call it interview, and they asked him about it. I forget what he said, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah, might have to look that one up. But so
back to the Acolyte.
to get back to the long way around this story, that as a fan, we don't need, like, if you're going to tell a story like the Acolyte, where it's a completely different time period, tell it right. Essentially, like, the visuals are great now, and because we had the issues with the visuals at the beginning where it looked like a 4-year-old had done them at times. Now we're at a point where the story has just died. Like, we don't need a flashback in episode 7. We've had so many other points where we could have had a little bit of backstory. And it's like it does ruin the story. And when you've got characters like Elnaka and Torben, and how epic that fight could have been, to then see it in this episode, it don't get me wrong, was still great, but it could have been so much better.
They made Torben a little erratic with his emotion.
I found he was too Anakin Skywalker for me in this episode.
Yeah, I did see some things they called him Torben Skywalker, and they're like, yeah, we know he's not a Skywalker, but
neither's right.
They casted they casted someone that looked very similar to Anakin, and then they sit there and go and do this, and it's like, bro, like, I get he's a Padawan, and I know Anakin and Ahsoka and even Kenobi at points were a little disobedient to their master, but I mean that's a normal thing. But Anakin being the excuse, and same with Ahsoka.
We've seen it so many times before. We've seen it, like you say, with Anakin, with Ahsoka, with Obi-Wan. We don't need a guy that looks kind of like a younger Anakin anyway, with the same sort of color hair, doing the same stuff. He stole a speeder. He then, went to try
ignored all of everybody.
Yeah. We've had movies and other series full of that. Like, there could have been a better way around it. And again, it comes down to the storytelling and the writing. But for me, it was just too similar to Anakin. And then to get the scar over the eye, that was just like, right, we are basically 100 years before Anakin with an Anakin Skywalker character. It's like, great.
Yeah.
I don't need that,
And not to mention being manipulated by the dark side, because that's basically what the witches were doing in his mind, saying, "Oh yeah, it's like, you want to go home? Well, we want you out of here. So just ask me, and I'll help you get out of here."
But I mean, one thing on the Torben front, when we saw him die, he was very eager to drink that poison. Nothing in this episode really explains why. And
that is true.
That's another bad point. It's like, Kalnaka's self-exiled because reasons. Torben took the poison because
willingly.
Yeah, willingly for reasons. We don't know what these reasons are. This episode would have been great if it answered those questions that we had from episodes 1 and 2.
Maybe he blames himself for this whole thing.
I mean,
even though he
Maybe so.
He was so erratic, jumping on this and leaving everybody.
But then make it apparent.
Yeah.
Don't just sort of leave it as an open-ended question, because people are gonna binge watch this when it all comes out. You know, we're watching it weekly and recording weekly. Some people are just going to watch episodes 1 to 8 in a row, and that's also not a good thing, because they're going to find out, you know, they're going to be as confused as we are now, just in a short period of time.
Like, I'm almost tempted just to jump on the once the final episode's out, I might just reorder the season for anybody that's binge watching. It's like, okay, watch episode 1, watch episode 2, watch episode 3, 7, 5, 6, and 8.
Yeah, no, I mean that would make more sense. You know, it's I am really annoyed by it. Clearly, because I've ranted about it so much in this span of the episode. But it had so much potential, and
didn't deliver.
Back, yeah, I know that we've got one episode left, but this for me is it. You know, like episodes 1 and 2, where we had this mysterious woman that was trying to kill the Jedi, and then her twin. I mean, like I said, when we did the first episode, it wasn't until the reveal of they are actually twins that I thought they were the same character, just like amnesia ridden, or, you know, something like that. Now that we know more of their backstory, it's like it's still great, but like the mystery elements have been overshadowed now by the poor decision making from the powers that be.
Right. Yeah, the show is definitely interesting. A lot of things that would do a lot differently, and things that just don't make sense. Again, like, out of everybody, I think Soul is the one that's the most responsible, because he's the one that killed Anastasia, and May witnessed that. She didn't witness any of the other Jedi doing anything, but just because they're there, she's targeting them.
Yeah, and, you know, again, big question as to why. And I mean, we've kind of said before that we kind of figured that Soul was more integral to this story as to what happened than we knew at the time. Now we know the answer, but I mean, one question that I've still got is, how can he not tell the difference between the twins?
I mean, he doesn't know them that well.
But
and I'm rewatching that. It's a good question. And I have the episode playing in the back. I'm going to jump real quick. I see why Anastasia went all misty and confusing Souls, because, again, it's the other mother. She went into an attack stance and Torben turned on his lightsaber, so Anastasia was trying to protect everybody, and Soul misread that and killed her. So, I mean, that's how I'm going to explain that.
It does make more sense, but then when you've got a bunch of characters in an attack stance, and then you've got their leader becoming this death ghost right next to you, yeah, you're gonna react in that way, like, no matter what. And, you know, you do see the look of sort of confusion on Soul's face, but again, it could have all been explained away. Just talk instead of automatically becoming Ghost Lady, who then became a Ghost Lady.
Yeah, she could have said, "Hey, stop! Turn off your lightsaber. Put your staff down. I already told you we're not going to solve this by violence." But here we are.
Yeah, but I think looking at this episode and how many questions it's raised, which is never good at all when it's a flashback.
Yeah, it's
I don't have high hopes for 8 because of how many questions that we still have to have the answers to.
mm-hmm. Which they can explain away in the books and comics, easy.
Which is
Most
great.
of them know you love that.
But
It's something that if you're
I'm
writing
not
a
gonna
story
read them.
on screen, yeah, like if you're writing a story on screen, you shouldn't need to jump to the books for an explanation of things.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes, like Soul finds May and Osha. They're on the opposite catechists or whatever you want to call them, and there's firing explosions, and he's sitting there trying to hold them both. It's like he's a little bit. He should be strong in the force. Like he should be able to pick them both up and pull them to him, but he lets go of one and then reaches down and has to grab her hand with his hand. It's like, you're supposed to be a Jedi Master, bro.
Yeah, see, again, sort of none of that made sense because you could see physically how much Soul was struggling to keep 2 bridges up, and yet these are meant to be fully trained Jedi.
Minus Torben.
Yeah, but when we see characters like, well, basically any other Jedi that are able to keep rocks from falling on them, a metal walkway with 2 kids on it is not going to be that taxing.
Shouldn't be. Especially because when he fights against Kilnaka, like, he's physically strong because, 1, he does that crazy jump over the lightsaber, and then 2, he sits there and knocks Kilnaka's lightsaber out, and then they sit there and go hand in hand, and he's able to hold himself against Kilnaka for a little bit.
Yeah.
But as far as force, he's just like, no, I can't do it.
But then, again, we're kind of now creating the story for the storytellers. But it's like, is that because of how blinded the Jedi have become by their own sense of superiority? They don't need to use the Force, so they've become rusty in it.
And which brings us to Qui-Gon, because Qui-Gon in his time, even in the book Master and Apprentice, he's like, no, we got to be one with the Force. He's like, the Force is trying to talk to us, guys. We've disconnected, whether you want to believe it or not. We're not as strong in the Force as we used to be in ages past. And even Anastasia says that to Soul. She says, you Jedi and your superiority or whatever is going to wipe out all of the Jedi. Kind of like leading up to Order 66 and all.
But I really do think that this episode would have been so much better if it was earlier. The runtime,
100%.
The runtime was great, and I kind of wish that every other episode had the same runtime.
It only had a high runtime this time because they brought in a lot of scenes from episode 3.
That is true.
Because if they didn't have those, it'd be just like every other episode. Maybe shorter.
Yeah. I mean, I still like the different perspective side of things, but again, you are right in what you're saying. It used a lot of the same scenes.
Because like Osha running up to the window after May, like that whole scene with May lighting up the whole place on fire, dropping the candle, and then locking her sister in, and then Osha running up to the window and then going into that little compartment for her to escape. Like, they didn't need to show that scene again. Like, I get it if they showed it from a different perspective, but it was literally the exact same scene.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, for a final point, the song at the end. So this is the first time that a Star Wars property has had an actual human language song in the end.
Oh, that's right. I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've looked into the lyrics, because when it came on, I was there and I purposefully had to look for the lyrics. because I like my music. I like understanding compositions and the lyrics, and it kind of gives a bit of the story away to a degree, because verse 1 is parts of me will die with you, and I think it's going to be the good parts. Don't want to feel at all, thick skin, big scars. So that, the big scars could potentially allude to Khmer with his big bit on the back. But the parts of me will, I mean, the song itself is for the twins,
right?
That's already been said, but parts of me will die with you, and I think it's going to be the good parts. That kind of makes me think, is one of the twins going to die, and will it be at the hands of the other? And then you've got, the pre-chorus is, while I was tethered to you, you cut it straight to the truth. And so we are one and the same, so all my pain is your pain. And to me, it sounds more like it's May's, that's more centered to May's perspective, because Osha was always the sort of more truthful one, whereas May was very much the one that tried to tell the truth but lied massively and then tried to kill everybody. So, I mean, one, it was great to have a proper song in Star Wars that, listening to it has that raw emotion.
So in that sense, I'm going to say May is going to be the one that dies, because I'm going to say with Osha, her good parts are dying.
Yeah.
Or getting lost.
And it does tie in with the roles of the twins switching.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah. I mean, as far as a song goes at the end of Star Wars, again, it's never been done to a proper human English language lyric song. It's an interesting one.
Very interesting indeed.
Yeah, so I'm, from that perspective, and looking at the lyrics and trying to understand what they mean, it does give me that excitement for the final episode. But at the same time, it's the final episode coming up, and we've got questions.
And they're probably not going to be answered.
Yeah. If they are, I will be surprised. But I don't want
it'll probably be rushed.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And I just remembered one other part. Speaking of the ending, Indara tells Kanaka to go contact the High Council. Kanaka's already left. And then her and Soul kind of have a little quick hand-to-hand combat thing going on. And then he asks her, like, okay, what are we going to tell the High Council? And she basically is like, oh yeah, we're going to lie to him. We're going to say exactly what happened. May started a fire, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes on. It's like, shouldn't you be told that to Kanaka before he left to contact the council? Because what if he starts talking before you even get over there and say, oh, bro, sorry, bro, we're changing the story so we don't look quite as bad.
This is what happened officially. That's what we're going with. What actually happened was a completely different thing.
Not completely.
Well, yeah.
May did start a fire and cause a lot of chaos, but, I mean, there was also a battle because the witches were so intent on sacrificing the children or whatever they're going to do with the children.
I mean, the thing is, though, having Kanaka contact the High Council, even if he did say there was a fire, like he wasn't around for the full.
That is true.
For the full thing, so maybe again it was sort of tactful, but I thought that almost fist fight was so out of nowhere.
That's what I'm saying. Like, these Jedi just seem like they don't know how to control their emotion.
Yeah.
It's like, I get it, their Jedi aren't perfect, but I feel for these Jedi that probably grew up as children should already be very stoic and in control of their emotion. Torben, I understand, he's still a kid,
Yeah,
technically.
I mean that's the thing. It is one thing to have, like the Anakin Obi-Wan fight. That was they used their fists as well, and that was very anger fueled and stuff like that. But there was a reason behind it. This almost fist fight in this episode was just, again, it was like, what are they doing? Like, is this just another way to show that the Jedi aren't all good, that aren't all the good that we thought? But at the same time, it's kind of like, we don't need to see that.
I do feel that they were like in this episode or this show, they're trying to portray the Jedi as bad guys.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're quite bad guys yet. I think this should just be the beginning of it. Or maybe it even started a little bit earlier. Who knows? But I still feel the Jedi, even in the prequel era, despite the main characters that we see, the rest of the Jedi are pretty like in control of their emotions and not so like erratic. But they are still tied to the politics. So the downfall of the Jedi was more arrogance rather than emotional.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think the more that we look into this, obviously, we've already said about this episode causing problems then for the every other episode that's happened this series. It's now bleeding over and causing problems for what we already know. Like, there is no need for the Jedi to be this aggressive, borderline Sith, unless Fluffy's idea was true and that the real master of the Sith is Trinity from the Matrix, and that she's not dead.
I'm gonna say no to that one though, but
I mean,
but yeah,
I know it's probably not going to be, because it's Venestra with the noodle lightsaber.
I don't even think it's her, because like unless they change legends, because right now a lot of the theories of the planet that Chimera is on is called Baldemic, which was a very high source of cortosis, and I think it was Plagueis is the one that kind of got control of that planet, or his master Tenebris. So unless they're pulling Chimera to be Darth Tenebris and he walks out alive and then Plagueis is the next step, then cool. But I don't think Vernestra's tied. I think she's just, because like I said, like she's in the High Republic books and comics, and they don't portray her as evil or anything like that. So to bring in live action and do a huge character change would be very left field. Baseball reference, sorry. It'd be out of left field.
That is true, though. I do get that, and I think the only way that we're going to get answers is by watching the next episode and sort of hoping that we do get answers.
Because it'd also be really weird to introduce a new character in the finale, unless it was like the last like few minutes, kind of like a cliffhanger. It's like, okay, kind of like what they did with Thanos in the first Avengers movie.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it wasn't really these guys, it's this guy pulling the strings here. Okay, cool. Now we got something to look forward to in the next season or the next episode or whatever. I wouldn't want them to introduce that character unless it was a cliffhanger. Otherwise, that's just more story and more things that close by the end of the episode. Because we got Vernestra's story where she's on the hunt trying to figure out what happened, and now she's got to find Soul. We got Soul on May, then we got Chimera and Osha, and then we got to have Vernestra tie everything up. So that's pretty much what we got going into the next episode. And to introduce the Sith in this episode would add more to that story and closure that they need to do by the end of the episode, especially if it's the same runtime as episode 7. Just not enough time. So I would like that to be like the end credit scene or the end scene. Like Vernestra and Soul, everybody dies, and Kamir walks up with Osha, and then it's like, Osha, this is my master.
Yeah, I mean, we can hope, but who knows?
Yeah, don't know. Got just a few more days, and then we'll have answers.
Yeah, well, that's all I can say.
Same. So hopefully we didn't come off too negative on this episode, guys. But I mean, you got to agree, there's more questions than answers. So hopefully we don't get rushed answers. And if they don't close it up, I know that this show has such a low rating, and I would like a second season if they brought on different writers and a different showrunner, because I don't know what Disney's doing. Like, I feel like they should be reading over the scripts and go, okay, yeah, Disney knows how to tell a story. Like, let's be real.
Yeah.
I can't believe that they would look at this and say, oh yeah, the order looks great. Like, yeah, this is cool. So yeah. So yeah, next week we will get the finale. So we're sort of excited. Like, we're ready for it. Let's see how they tie everything up. So until next time, guys, we will catch you guys next week. But before you go, just remember, you check in the description below. Check out our link tree where we have a bunch of merch with entertainmentearth.com, and we got cool t-shirts that I think you guys would like. Also, be sure to check out our social media. Check out our Instagram and our Discord. We have a great Star Wars community where you can be able to talk with other fans. And yeah, so until next week, guys, may the Force
be with you
always